reading the book and I was so inspired and really, really grabbed me. There's a date of significance. I want to touch on that just for a moment, because I think it goes to some of who you are, right? The survivor's obligation. January 29th, 2010. Tell us more about that.
So January 29th, 2010 marks the day that our world was turned upside down. So the time leading up to that, I had some strange symptoms, had not been quite feeling right, but nothing to be concerned about. And really, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to rate the pain, I would say a 2. So, certainly nothing to take me to the ER, maybe warrant mentioning it at the doctor, right? And my son, we were monitoring a mass that we had discovered in his lung at the same time. January 29th represents the day that we went to go get a checkup for him. And I simultaneously just walked across the hallway at this hospital, because they happen to have a urology clinic there that could look at, do a quick ultrasound of me and see if there's anything wrong with me that's giving me this minor pain. And we had the nightmare revelation that day that I had a mass the size of a racquetball inside of my abdomen, and that my son's mass had grown as well in his lung.
John Fenta here, the CEO of Sensei, and I am just so honored. I am so honored to have Joel Neeb, Thor Neeb. Thor is his call name, and he's going to tell us more about that today. But Joel is the CEO of Afterburner Inc. Joel, welcome.
Thank you, John. Really excited to be here.
Oh, it's so awesome. We've had some great conversations leading up to today, and I got a chance to read your book, and Survivor's Obligation, you co-authored with Chris Strickland. And you have a great company, Afterburner. I love that name, and I'd love you to just tell the people who are watching and listening what Afterburner is about.
Sure, John. So Afterburner is a team of former elite military members. So all fighter pilots, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Green Berets. And we took what allowed us to be successful in the very complex, dynamic, high stakes environment that we came from and apply that to corporate teams. And our belief is that everyone deserves to be on an elite team. And there's nothing like the feeling of having an inspiring mission and an elite team surrounding you. And we help to build that for corporate endeavors.
That is so cool. Is there like a typical company you like to work with, or what's a company profile that you guys serve best, you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So the complexity and the fast changing nature of the world we came from, and the high stakes nature, really translates well to think tech. So we work with a lot of big tech companies, and usually hyper growth tech companies who are successful almost in spite of themselves, right? They have great technology, great innovation, and maybe they've reached the $100 million mark or the $200 million mark, but they're reaching a plateau because they haven't built the structure and the operational rigor behind the scenes to support this level, let alone making it to the next level. And that's where our principles come in and help to build for success into the future.
That's really, really inspiring and really cool. And tell me about your backdrop. I love your backdrop. Tell everybody who's watching what we're looking at here.
Yeah, this is the good old days. This is me back in, I want to say 2009 or 10 timeframe, probably a little bit earlier than that. And that actually is me. That's me upside down. I was inverted. I let Top Gun, and probably 45,000 feet, and took a selfie before selfies were cool, and that was the good old days.
That's really, really neat. So now the term Afterburner has a special meaning when you're flying you flew an F-15, is that right?
I did. Yeah. That is one of the planes I flew.
What is an Afterburner? Tell people what an Afterburner if they don't know what that is.
Yep. So if you think about, pushing your power up to the highest level in a fighter plane, you push it up to the highest level and you think of that throttle quadrant, you're pushing everything forward, just like you see in the movies. There's a resistance once it reaches that highest level, and you can actually push through that into another level. So it's like the turbo version for an airplane, and that's called Afterburner. And that what Afterburner literally is taking gasoline and just throwing it out the back of the plane in buckets and lighting it on fire. So now it's a literal explosion behind your aircraft that accelerates you along your current path faster than anything else possible. You effectively become a rocket. And of course, we love that analogy because that's what we do for companies. We light their rocket and start heading them on the right trajectory at an accelerated pace as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Yeah, I grew up in an airplane family, an airline family, and thought one day I was going to be a Top Gun before even the movie came out. Came out a few years after I've been a professional, but just chose not that path and chose a different path. But I really am just, first of all, I want to thank you for your service to our country.
My privilege.
Yeah,
It was a blast every day. It was never a sacrifice for me, fortunately.
That's great. And I want to thank you, and I feel honored that I have several friends that were members of the U.S. Army, military, Navy, Air Force, and so I'd like to call you one of my friends too, my friend.
Absolutely, proud to hear that.
So, I was reading the book and I was so inspired, and really, it really grabbed me. There's a date of significance. I want to touch on that just for a moment, because I think it goes to some of who you are, right? The survivor's obligation. January 29th, 2010. Tell us more about that.
So January 29th, 2010 marks the day that our world was turned upside down. So the time leading up to that, I had some strange symptoms, had not been quite feeling right, but nothing to be concerned about. And really, on a scale of 1 to 10, if I were to rate the pain, I would say a 2. So, certainly nothing to take me to the ER, maybe warrant mentioning it at the doctor, right? And my son, we were monitoring a mass that we had discovered in his lung at the same time. January 29th represents the day that we went to go get a checkup for him. And I simultaneously just walked across the hallway at this hospital, because they happen to have a urology clinic there that could look at, do a quick ultrasound of me and see if there's anything wrong with me that's giving me this minor pain. And we had the nightmare revelation that day that I had a mass the size of a racquetball inside of my abdomen, and that my son's mass had grown as well in his lung. And so now we're off to the races very quickly down this nightmare.
Can't imagine what you and your family were going through, and your wife going through at that time.
Yeah, it was everything. The world turned upside down. It was every day waking up and saying, surely this was a nightmare, because nothing this, against all the odds would ever take place. We were the picture of good health prior to this. And then every morning, as I slowly came out of sleep, that period in between awake and asleep, I would realize that no, it is not a nightmare I'm waking up from, but rather a nightmare I'm waking up to.
Yeah. So obviously there's good news, right? You obviously here with us today.
Yep. Spoiler alert. I'm doing fine. So is my son. Yep.
Your son's fine. Great. So is there a lesson you took away from that experience for you? I mean, what awakenings or learnings or lessons did you learn from that?
Yeah, so many, John. So as I was going through it, I remember thinking to myself, the immediate thing that takes place, probably predictable for most folks, is all of a sudden the noise of your life goes away, right? All the other dumb little meetings that we have, or the frustration with traffic, or all the things that are important to us on a daily basis, and maybe we're not even paying attention. And then, of course, is because I'm focused on much bigger challenges at this point. And in the moment, I had the presence of mind to observe the fact that, well, gosh, I really wish I had known that all of these things could be turned off, right? Like what I would give to go back into the pre-January 29th world and live differently, knowing that I didn't have to pay attention to all this noise. Because now here I am completely disregarding it and focused only on my health and my son's health. And it was an epiphany that I had that choice, right? I had that option. Mm-hmm. That was the first thing I took away from it. And the second thing goes back to a quote that I think of a lot, which is, the dying have the most to teach us about life. Mm-hmm. And probably not a surprise. we've all been with somebody probably near the end of their life, and we find wisdom in their words and a renewed priority around what's important and what most likely should have been important all along. And the reason for that is that once again, it strips away everything else in our lives, and it forces us to reprioritize and really take stock of our life to that point. And we come up with some pretty important revelations. And so I had the same feeling. And I said, if I did make it out of this, I made a deal with God. I said, if I make it out of this, God, I wish I had heard all these things before I was diagnosed with cancer. I'm going to write a book, and I'm just going to share my observations from this. If I don't make it out of this and I don't have time to write a book, I'm just going to spend time with my family, and I'm not going to write it. But that was my deal.
We have a lovely family. I love the post you've been putting out on LinkedIn with you flying the airplane for the holiday weekend, and that was really cool.
Thank you.
God, there's so many questions that come to mind. So, you and I had talked previously. We talked a bit about, you're the CEO
Yep.
of Afterburner, right? So what are some, from your perspective, what's important as a leader, leading a consulting company, consulting a business that you lead? What's important to you as a leader?
So it goes back to, and I think this is a really relevant question for all leaders in this time period, especially during COVID, because COVID forced us all to stop coasting, right? Even if we were thrust into a situation where you had a well-oiled machine and everything's going great, and all you had to do is remove barriers for your team. Now it's all bets are off, and you got to recreate what your company looks like and how you lead your part of that company if you're a leader within it. And so we're all getting this crash course in the lesson, but here's what I take away from it. That a leader's got a couple of roles in front of them. First of all, you have to align the team to a clear, consistent vision. It has to be something that is painted in exquisite detail. What's the long-term vision for success? And I don't mean the bumper sticker statement and maybe something that you put out in marketing, but earn my buy-in, just like my buy-in was earned as a fighter pilot into what I was signing up for, and why I should put forth my effort into this. The great example for how powerful a vision can be is if you think about Navy SEALs who, if you know anything about their training to become a Navy SEAL, they are drugged through the sand in the middle of the night, and they're kept awake for 4 days at a time, and they're held underwater very often until they pass out, and they're literally tortured. And you think about this and you think in any other circumstance, this person would be calling 911 and they'd have a great lawsuit on their hands and probably put the torturers in jail. But because they have this clear vision of what they want to become on the other side of this version of a human being, this Navy SEAL that's bigger than they are today, not only do they put up with this, they sign up for it and they volunteer for it. And I'm not saying that you need to drag your corporate team members, through the sand, but if they can create a vision that's so compelling that they're willing to endure that, think of what you can do with your team and base that off of an aligning vision for success. And that's step number one.
Very good. Very good. We talked about, tell me about imposter syndrome. We talked about that last time we spoke.
Yeah, so I told you that I believe that, well, first of all, I have a healthy dose of imposter syndrome. Every time I've gotten a new opportunity in my life, my mind immediately goes to, well, this is it. You've now been promoted beyond your competencies, and you're going to be found out, right? You don't deserve this opportunity. And in my youth, that was a challenging place to be. I don't think I'm unique, by the way. I think that's a pretty common thing. Everybody has varying degrees of imposter syndrome. It was a challenging place to be. As I get older, I look at imposter syndrome as a superpower. Here's what I mean by that. If you have imposter syndrome coupled with a growth mentality, if you're the type of person who sees the world as something that you can change and it's not a fixed state, then you can take that imposter syndrome and use that as the rocket fuel for change. So I don't try to fight that voice anymore in the back of my head when I get a new opportunity that says, you don't deserve this. My answer is fine. Maybe I don't deserve it, but I will, and I can, and I'm going to earn that. And I've learned again and again that through that growth mentality, whether it was going from driving a car to flying a fighter plane faster than the speed of sound in a matter of months to, becoming a CEO of a company in a couple of years, you can earn that next chapter. You may not be ready for it. Maybe the imposter syndrome's right, but you have the ability to be worthy of it.
Yeah, I like to say you choose that, right? It's a choice. Yeah. Choice to take that on and to do that. So tell me about what is your superpower? What is you've heard the term maybe unique genius or unique ability. What's your superpower?
So I would say that my superpower over the years, and it's evolved. I think what I've become really good at, because once again, we are what we repeatedly do, right? Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is a habit. And so what that means to me is that I'm not born with anything necessarily that I'm special at. I tell my kids all the time, they're not gifted. which may seem like a mean thing to say to your kids. But what I'm really telling them is, once again, own your progress, own your growth, and decide to become gifted in some particular way. And so what I've become gifted at over the years is synthesizing ideas and translating that into action. And really what that comes down to is teaching people, right? And so one of the things we always talked about as fighter pilots is the most complex, complicated environment you can be in, right? The world's going by you faster than the speed of sound, 350 switches and dials in the cockpit. It takes a master instructor to be able to synthesize all of that information down to 2 or 3 key things that you want your students to be paying attention to so that they're successful. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not teaching somebody to have 350 eyeballs to look at every instrument. It's saying, here are the 2 instruments that are critical in this phase of flight. And so for me, whether that's in a tech environment and I'm helping them to synthesize their go-to-market plan down to the key factors that make them successful, work backward from customer success stories and interpret that into their sales training methodology, or leading my family, it's the master instructor piece that I think I've created into a superpower over time.
Very good. Those are all important traits. And I think, sometimes we try to put ourselves in buckets, right? I got my family bucket and I got my work bucket. I got my whatever bucket, flying or whatever it might be. At the end of the day, it's all, you're one whole human being. And so it all integrates, doesn't it?
No, it's a really important question. And we call it adjacent skill sets, where I come from, and adjacent competencies. And here's what that really means, John. There's at face value, there's no reason why a fighter pilot should be able to offer anything to a tech go-to-market team, right? The skills just don't look like they would translate. Matter of fact, not only do they translate, but you're going to get outside the box innovative thinking from somebody outside of your traditional skill set. You know this as a football player, right? I mean, how many times have you thought to yourself, I'm going to apply some of the elite team football gridiron mentality to this corporate problem, and that's outside the box thinking that nobody else in the room would have come up with. That's diversity of thought you're able to apply because of those adjacent skill sets.
Great. I'd love to ask this question of my guests on the show. And we may have already talked about it, but is there a defining moment, what I call a defining moment, a moment in time when you were challenged with something, but that made you stronger and it set the path for you for the success you've had in your life? Is there a moment like that in your life you'd like to share?
Yeah, for sure. So it's not January 29th. That didn't transform me, right? That just kind of put me in the fetal position for 6 weeks. And if anything, it made me feel sorry for myself. And that was the beginning of my decline into a valley of struggle, and not the low point, right? The low point occurred a couple of weeks later, as I was traveling to Houston to go get an impression from a doctor that was specialized in my type of cancer. And in the weeks that had transpired between January 29th and mid-March dates when this occurred, I had found out that not only was it cancer, but it was stage 4 cancer. And it's a ridiculously rare type of cancer. I have a 15% chance to live. And so it was, just bad news after bad news. And so I was shell shocked. I spent the next 6 weeks just getting beat up over this and having just mental anguish every single day, and wishing my nights away because I couldn't sleep, and I just stared at the fan spinning and thinking about my death that was coming shortly, and then wishing the day away the next day because now I'm super tired. I haven't slept in days, and I'm just waiting for night to try to sleep again, and then the whole cycle would continue. All that to paint the picture of the real low point for me, which was going to this hospital in Houston and going to get checked out by a specialist, which should have been a good thing, right? Because I'd fought to get this specialist, and this person was the only one who could give me a fighting chance here. But I had this overwhelming sense of dread, even worse than I'd felt up to that point, as I'm going up to the hospital. And so as I'm pulling up to this hospital, I am with my wife, and it's just overwhelming how terrible I'm feeling right now in the sense of dread. She drops me off there. And as I'm walking into the building, I realize why I have this horrible feeling. And it's because I'm walking into the building that I'm going to die in. And it all just dawns on me in that moment that in one of these windows of this giant hospital in downtown Houston, probably within the next couple of months, I'm going to take my last look outside and struggle and go through the pain of dying, and just it all just crashed on me in that moment. And so I stopped walking into the hospital. I closed my eyes. I had tears streaming down. I was mad at God, and I was literally just sitting there and angry with God, saying, I don't deserve this. You need to heal me now. And the next thing I know, I opened my eyes and I lock eyes with another person. And it's a little girl, and she's got really beautiful blue eyes. She's looking right at me. I'm looking right at her. And she's being wheeled into the hospital by her dad. And she's got a surgical mask on, and she has no hair, and she's really frail. And I can tell in her eyes that she's afraid. And in that moment, I went from the lowest low of my entire life to saying, God, I have nothing but blessings in my life. I'm 33 years old. I'm a fighter pilot with a beautiful family. I've gotten everything that anybody could ever want in their life. Don't help me. Help that little girl who's not going to live to be a teenager. And the door shut behind her. And then I was left to deal with that moment and what had just occurred. And so, I know the exact time of my transformative moment. I don't think too many people have it to that point like I do, but here's why that was so transformative. Because I realized that I went from the lowest low of my entire life, the moment that I had felt so much self-pity and so much stacked against me, to then, like a light switch, going into a new mentality where I have empathy for another person and I don't want any help, and I want to help out this other person instead, and asking God to help out this person. And I realized that if my mind could change in that moment, then I could choose for it to change in any moment for the rest of my life. And I committed to that. I said, all right, I'm going to, I don't know how much longer I got, probably not too much longer, but I'm just going to stop feeling sorry for myself. And I'm going to choose my outlook from this point forward.
Such an inspiring story. As you're describing that, I was there with you in that story, and the power of giving and the power of sometimes letting go and the power of giving and being in that state of gratitude. I sensed some gratitude because you were grateful for what you had, right? And you saw in that little girl what she may not have ever. And that power in that moment, I think, was very inspiring for you to have that awakening.
I appreciate that. And it's an epiphany that I've had since then as well. There's a phrase that resonates with me, that comparison is the thief of all joy. And what that means is that, we're never really unhappy until we're comparing ourselves against somebody else, right? I don't see how little I have until I think about somebody else who has more. I don't see my failures until I see somebody else winning. And I agree, that's probably true. Comparison is the thief of all joy. But if that's the case, then gratitude can be the source of all joy. And we can choose gratitude in those darker moments and reap the benefits of it.
Well, this has really been a powerful interview and conversation today, and I want to thank you. One kind of final question for you is there some last bit of wisdom you want to share with other business leaders out there that you want to share and impart with them before we sign off here in a few moments?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll translate it from my book to the business. So my book is called Survivor's Obligation, and it's about the obligation that we all have as survivors, who each one of us is. If you're hearing me right now, you are a survivor. You have survived something in your life that has changed you. When I said that, your mind immediately went to it. Or we all know what we've survived, and yours probably is not cancer, but you may have survived divorce or some hardship or family breakdown or losing a loved one. You fill in the blank. You already know what it is. But the point is, you're alive on the other side of it. And that carries with it an obligation to live your life differently, because you're living the life that all those other people that we've lost along the way would have given anything to have. And as a survivor, it's our obligation to commit ourselves to living that life to the fullest. Let's talk about how that translates to the corporate environment and how we help teams to transform. We've all just been through something horrific, right? COVID has shaped our lives in incredible ways over the past 15 months and brought hardship that none of us ever anticipated. But there's something else on the other side of these valleys. Just as I talked about the valley that I had in my life, on the valley on the other side of the corporate teams and the elite teams we're part of and the family teams that you're part of that have faced this hardship, there's something called post-traumatic growth we can choose right now. We're getting a reset opportunity for massive growth, but we have to choose it and we have to be deliberate about it. We can either feel sorry for ourselves, as I did, and wallow in the self-pity of the moment, and we probably deserve to do that. Or we can say, how is this the foundation for every good thing that's going to happen after this? And how can I see this as the reset opportunity for my entire life? You'll probably never get another opportunity like COVID, even though it was difficult. And even though we've all been challenged for the past year, this is also an opportunity for us, much like dying affords us, to shed away all the noise and to find what's important, to build a vision for our team, build focus towards the critical few priorities and discard anything that doesn't fit on that list, and then create a cadence of disciplined execution to go pursue it. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to our teams. We owe it to our organization. Work should feel like focused play. It should be the thing that we look forward to doing. And the only way that happens is if we have an inspiring mission and an elite team that we built around that mission.
Well, Joel, certainly an inspiring conversation today. I want to thank you for being on with me today.
John, my pleasure. Thanks for reaching out with me. I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to more.
Great. And how can people find your company or find you or find out more about Afterburner?
Yep, we're at afterburner.com, and I'd love to have a one-on-one conversation with you as well. The easiest way to reach out to me is on LinkedIn. We're constantly posting and sharing. We have an open dialogue with our network and our followers there. So you can go look at Joel Neeb at LinkedIn and connect with me. If you send me a message, I will reply, and it is me that's replying, and see if we can help you out.
That's great. And I'll put all that information in the show notes so everybody get all the links and everything. So Joel, Thor Neeb, I love that Thor call sign. It's been a pleasure to have you on today in a conversation. It's been inspiring and insightful. I want to thank you very much for being with me today.